What's going on, guys? Welcome to another week of the podcast. In the studio is, I'm going to be a little honest and very biased. My favorite guest that we've ever had is my wife. Danielle is in the studio today. Danielle, how are you feeling?
I feel great.
Feeling great, guys. She's in the studio today because we are discussing our 7 rules for your dating relationship, engagement, marital relationship, whatever you got. But 7 rules for your relationship. And before we jump into this, I want to encourage you guys. Number 1, these rules we really feel like are incredibly impactful and will be extremely helpful for you as you navigate your relationship. Yet, it's definitely not exhaustive. And so we recognize that there's so many more wise things and many more insights that you're going to pick up along the way that will better and enhance your relationship. But these are things that are incredibly important to us, things that have helped us along the way, and we pray and are confident will help you in your relational journey as well. So, Danielle, you ready to jump in?
Let's go.
Let's go. Here we go. Number 1, both people need to have an affinity and desire to build a relationship with each other's family. And this was something that we ran into. You know, my in-laws are incredibly fair and we have a great relationship today, but we didn't always have like the most super solid relationship, and at times it was actually really difficult. And so there was lots of temptation in there, and I'll let Danielle speak to this a little bit, is that there was tons of times of tension and times of which like we really did not get along and stuff like that, and that strained relationship strained our dating relationship along the way. And it really caused a temptation within me to be like, who cares about this? Like, I don't really want to try anymore. I don't want to spend time, whatever it may be. And that like compounded the issue, that lack of affinity, that lack of desire. Mm-hmm. And Romans 12:18 even says, do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. And I certainly was not abiding by that. But Danielle, what are your thoughts on like the importance of your partner having an affinity, a desire to have a relationship with your family?
Yeah, I think just touching back onto what you're saying, I think there were times where it was definitely harder to have those types of relationships for, whatever reason. But just the importance of it, I think, rings true to just this day of us being married. And we continuously spend time with my family and just really appreciate the relationship that we get to have with them, and just the way that they are part of our lives, a part of our marriage, a part of our relationship. I couldn't imagine what it would be like if we didn't have that kind of support system from them. So
yeah, absolutely. And for those listening, my in-laws are incredibly fair to me, but for some of you, I totally recognize the fact that maybe your partner's family is not fair to you. Maybe they're a little crazy, a little irrational, and I totally get that. But just know that it's not our job to be able to dictate that people act a certain way. Mm-hmm. That it's our job to live at peace with one another. And so always loving, always being the one who's pushing compassion and pushing patience and being that bigger person in that situation always. And that will lend itself volumes in the long term, especially if you plan to marry that person. Mm-hmm. Always have an affinity, always desire to build a relationship with the family. Because as they say, when you marry the person, you marry the family. That is incredibly true. So that's number 1. What's number 2, Danielle?
Yeah, so number 2 is my personal fave, and that is just praying together for one another and even with one another. We don't think we did this too much whenever we were dating, but do it while we are married, and just making it a point to pray with one another every single night. But more importantly, just praying for your spouse and praying over them and just praying that God is leading them and that they are seeking Jesus, and that you guys, most importantly, y'all are putting God at the center of your life. You just want to have that foundation for one another. I think that's great. Absolutely.
Prayer is the difference between what you can do and what God can do. And so praying with your significant other is cool, your boyfriend or girlfriend, your husband or wife, that's great. Praying like for them, but also praying with them and doing all that stuff just really sets the spiritual tone in the relationship. It keeps your eyes on the prize on what it is to honor Christ in every single thing that you do. And that will really help when it comes to falling in line with the rest of these things on the list. Speaking of the list, let's jump to number 3. This one was huge for me, I think, personally, is do not ditch the activities or friends you had before the relationship. And so the big thing is like when you're a guy like me and you find a girl like Danielle, the temptation is to like really lock into that and just cash all your chips into the relationship and just say, oh my gosh, like they make me so happy. He or she makes me so happy that I don't need to spend time with anybody else. I don't need to do anything else. Like they are my lifeblood. They are my purpose. They are everything that I need in my life. And though they are great and though they are awesome, they are not your God. And they may make a great girlfriend, but they make a horrible God. And so the important thing is to not ditch those activities or friends you had before the relationship. So if you, for example, for me, like I like to work out, it was important that I continue to work out. If you're a person who enjoys disc golf on the weekends, like continue to enjoy disc golf. If you like photography, or if you like social media, or if you like graphic design, or whatever your outlet is, it's important that you continue to do that even throughout your dating relationship, and find time to do that. As much as you want to spend every waking moment with that other person, always make time for the things that give you purpose and fulfillment. The same way with your friends, right? Don't ditch your friends. They're the people who got you to the point that you were at, and they're going to be the people who keep you at that and support you and love you through many, many hardships. And so, Danielle, what are your thoughts on like retaining your activities, retaining your friends and all that stuff, and not cashing in like all your purpose on one person? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of us, or probably plenty of us, know someone who every single time they get into a relationship, they kind of just ditch their friends, maybe ditch a sport that they love to do or whatever, all for their significant other. And then that relationship ends and they're kind of like, oh, well, now what do I do? And so to just kind of avoid all of that, just still continue to hang out with your people. One, you don't want to ditch them for a guy, but more importantly, you're going to need your community and your friends as you walk throughout life. So you need them together with you. So I think that's important. And I totally 100% agree, just to continue to pursue your passions and what you like to do, and don't ever give that up for a guy or a gal.
Mad facts, babe. Good one. What you got next?
Yeah. So the next one that we have is a big one. Communicate your feelings consistently and clearly. So don't leave your partner in the dark. This is an important one for me, and one that I can resonate with a ton, because I'm not really good at communicating. And so that is something that I have had to work on in our dating relationship, and even in our marriage today, is just being able to communicate with your significant other, because as I have learned is you can't read my mind, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do a decent job, but yeah, you're right. Sometimes I do miss on the assumptions there. But no, I mean, you're exactly right, babe. It's just when you don't communicate, it creates a ton of anxiety in the relationship and creates this space of like unknown. And at least for me, and I wonder if there's any guys out there who resonate with this, and gals as well, of like when I feel like I'm in the dark, when I feel like I don't know, or when I can't get a good grasp on like how the other person's feeling, I feel like I get very like annoying and pushy, and no one likes pushy people. And so sometimes that can be the temptation. Is like, well, I don't know how they feel, so I feel like I need to text them or reach out, or like find out how they feel, or maybe they're thinking about breaking up with me. When in reality, maybe they're just quiet, or maybe they don't feel like texting all the time, or maybe like for us, I was horrible. Still am to this day. I'm horrible at texting, horrible at replying, and that probably was misinterpreted plenty of times. And you know, if you're in a relationship, kind of the onus is on you to communicate what you're feeling. If you're feeling like doubts about the relationship, it's okay to share that in a way that's loving. If you're feeling like, you know, some things are toxic, or you're working through some stuff, it's okay to communicate that in progress. Like you don't always have to have like the finished thought to be able to communicate that. And so don't leave your partner in the dark. Communicate very clearly, which brings us to number 5 here, is be serious about setting physical boundaries. Be serious about setting physical boundaries. Oh my gosh, I don't even know why I'm giving this point, because I'm the guy, and I felt like for us guys, it's like that grind of glorifying God in our sexuality and our physical boundaries can be such a massive hill to climb. But obviously scripture calls us, 1 Corinthians 6:18 talks about fleeing from sexual immorality. And, you know, those listening to the podcast can't see this, but my wife is incredibly beautiful. And so there is such a massive draw to, you know, to go past those things and enter into sin in our relationship. And you know, for us, flee from sexual immorality had to be like a constant thing. We're just always trying to fight And it was that way, obviously until we got married, and we're allowed to do that in the right context, because I've said this on this podcast before, like sex is great if you wait. Sex is great if you wait, but if you don't wait, it causes tons of complexity in the relationship. And, for us, if those types of things, are being done all the time, whatever it may be, it can really cause a lot of toxicity and a lot of weird bonds that aren't meant to be there, and, all of that stuff. And so setting those boundaries, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's leaving the door cracked, whether that's not being, home alone. I understand if you're an adult, like you might not have roommates, setting boundaries around where there's like a certain curfew, or, whatever you feel like you're falling into, make sure you're vigilant about setting those physical boundaries, because if you don't, those bonds that you create as a result will really throw some nuance and unnecessary difficulty into that relationship. Daniel, do you have any thoughts on that? Or you just want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, no, I
She's good to go.
agree.
She was like, Nick, please take that one before the episode started. She's like, please take the physical boundaries one. And I was like, yeah, I got you. Anyways, Daniel, you got the next one though.
Yeah, so next one is don't compare your relationship to other people's, and to run your own race. So, I mean, we went through a season in our life where we were supposed to get engaged and didn't for, I don't know, probably the next year. And so it was really easy to fall into the temptation of just kind of comparing myself to others on social media, seeing other people get engaged and married and all that stuff, and just how hard it was to just kind of walk through that and not feel like I should be somewhere else where I'm not. So, comparison is definitely the thief of joy here in this situation. And doesn't really matter if other people seem happy, or whatever else social media portrays, because social media is just kind of a glimpse of people's highlights of good times. So
don't compare your reality to somebody else's highlight reel. And that was, for us, I've shared this several weeks back. You should go listen to it. I think it's on one of our breakup episodes, but I talked about how Danielle and I broke up for like 9 months. And when we broke up, I had the ring. Like I'd already had an engagement ring for her. And so that comparison, like I deleted social media throughout that time, just because I really felt like, and I think she would agree, would ditto this, that I felt like we should have been engaged. I felt like we should have been engaged, preparing, getting ready for a wedding and all that great stuff, getting ready to do life together. And we were just, I was dumped. And so that comparison thing really sticks out, and, comparison kills contentment. And I was far from content in that season of my life. And so stay far away from comparison, run your race, walk your journey, and move at the pace that God has called you to move at. So I think we got number 7, but I think we're going to give him a bonus one, either because I miscounted, or we'll just give him a bonus one. So number 7, and then we'll get to the last one after this, is recognize that the goal is progress, not perfection. The goal is progress, not perfection. Meaning this is that you're never going to be perfect. You're always going to slip up sexually in some way, shape, or form, physically. Somehow, some way, someone will mess up or go too far, or whatever that may be. You probably and likely are going to say something that you didn't mean to say. You're going to act impatient. You're going to act in a way that's kind of annoying. You're going to forget an anniversary. You're going to forget some special date. You're not going to get them a gift. You're going to do something that messes up. And just recognize that you're not going to be the perfect partner. It's not going to happen. And also, with the onus on the other person, recognize that your partner's not going to be the perfect partner. And always giving them slack, and always giving them the same grace that God has afforded us on the cross in the form of Jesus Christ. And recognizing, like, man, it's just not about getting to this upper echelon of perfection. Oh my gosh, we do nothing wrong. This is always butterflies and blossoms all the time. Is that at one point you have to come to grips with, we just got to progress. What if we argued 3 times last week, let's try to argue 1 time this week. If we slipped up, down here, let's just try to get better. Like, our relationship is not ruined because we messed up. It's ruined if we keep the mentality that, we're just never going to progress for the glory of God. So always keep that in mind. You're going to fail. And it also teaches you a valuable lesson when it comes to marriage, because marriage is all about working through stuff. Like, people ask me, like, oh my gosh, you guys got married. Like, it must be so great. And it is great. But all marriage is a bunch of solving problems. There's so many things to discuss, so many things to hash out when you get married. Finances, family, once kids are introduced, the kids. Like, there's so many things to argue about, so many things to battle against, so many areas to mess up in. And always recognize, like, just make progress. Just fix it and move on. Fix it and move on. Fix it and move on. So, Danielle, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you touched that one pretty perfectly, and just don't dwell in your mistakes, I think, is probably the best thing I could say.
Bars. Cool. Let's give them the bonus one. I guess 8 of
Yeah.
7.
So the last one is to start your healing journey now. So this is something that I think both of us could be pretty passionate about, in just the fact that we walked through such a hard season and just seeking counseling through that. And so during just that break of after we broke up to in between we got back together, just being really consistent in really bettering ourselves. We wanted to be the best versions of ourselves so we could be the best version for one another. I think that is truly important to just, work through whatever you have, whatever you got going on, whether that's counseling or whatever it is, whatever that looks like for you. For me, it was counseling, to just,
For me, it was counseling too.
yeah. For the both of us, it was counseling. But I think through that season, we grew a ton. We knew for me, I knew what it was like to really trust in the Lord and just kind of have Him walk through hard times with me. So
Yep.
I say all of that for counseling, how it has helped us in just being able to walk through different journeys with one another together and talk with one another, communicate with one another. I think that has set us up for success and just kind of working through and healing through a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to counseling and therapy, it's not about what's wrong with you that drives you into therapy. A lot of people say that, like, "Oh my gosh, they're in therapy. Something must be really wrong with them." And it's not about what's wrong with you that drives you into therapy and counseling. It's about what's right with you, the humility, the drive, the desire to say, you know what, I want to be the person that God has purposed me to be, whether that be mentally, physically, spiritually. I want to cover all of that stuff. And counseling was a massive factor for all of this. I'm one of those like manly men who think I can solve all the problems and things like that on my own. But counseling was a game changer for not only me, but for our relationship. I would dare to say that we probably would not be together today if we had not walked through counseling together. And so, Danielle, thank you for joining me. You did incredibly awesome. And I'm excited to have you back on future episodes. She doesn't know that, but she'll be back on future episodes.
Wow. Louis too.
And Louis is also laying in my feet, and he will be back on future episodes. But guys, we really appreciate you listening. We love you guys a ton, and we pray that these rules help your relationship a ton. So peace out, guys. Have a great week.
A ton.
A ton.